My name is Miranda Glyder. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my speech. As humans transitioned to agrarian lifestyle and gravitated towards more permanent settlements, gender roles transitioned from the basic biological difference that females gave birth and males did not into a gender hierarchy. With these changes, males switched from hunting to tasks requiring heavy labor such as plowing and looked to take on more dominant roles through a system of patriarchy. On the other hand, women took up repetitive tasks such as planting and weeding and had to submit to the male head of their household. Many Americans fail to realize the influences socialization has on defining gender roles, which produce the acceptable behavior in one's society. As a result, socialization gender roles stigmatize and discriminate against sex and gender. Anyone who's ever filled out a form or a survey will notice gender is usually segmented into two choices, male or female. However, not everyone fits these predetermined gender boxes because sex and gender are not the same thing. Lisa Wade and Mariah Free define sex as the physical difference between males and females by their primary sex characteristics, which are the organs directly related to reproduction, and secondary characteristics like hair growth and voice change. Gender, however, is a social contract, an implied agreement among members of a society which produces the acceptable cultural norms for males and females. An example of how sex and gender might differ is an intersex individual, someone born with the sexual anatomy which differs from the biology expected from males and females, as well as those of a deviant gender identity, a person's internal perception of his or her gender, which might differ from their anatomical sex. Socialization is responsible for establishing the foundation of gender roles and is the process in which individuals are instructed on the appropriate behavior of social norms. Sex often determines whether one is socialized as a male or female. This is difficult for intersex individuals and those of a deviant gender identity because they might wish to take the behavior of the opposite sex or a mix of both. The four main agents of socialization are family, education institutions, peer groups, and mass media. Families socialize boys and girls differently, since boys are typically given more independence and are treated rougher, whereas girls are more likely to be coddled by their parents. Boys are expected to be tough and are given toy trucks and guns, and tasks requiring strength like mowing the lawn, whereas girls are expected to be more passive and nurturing and are given dolls and tea sets. They're also given domestic and organizational tasks such as folding laundry or cleaning. Parents promote negotiation and motor skills in boys by encouraging heterogeneous group activities like sports, where on the other hand they promote language and role play in girls by encouraging small, intimate activities like playing with dolls. Additionally, education institutions socialize boys and girls differently by encouraging them to take different courses. Girls are encouraged to take home economics, humanities, and language, whereas boys are encouraged to take math, science, and law. Contemporary perspectives on socialization and social development in early education found teachers gave boys more time, praise, and attention than girls. Girls were interrupted more often, while boys were given additional time to expand on their ideas. Teachers are prone to ask boys more higher-order critical thinking questions as opposed to lower-order recounting of facts when compared to girls. The third agent of socialization, peer groups, socializes people through criticism and praise. People often attempt to conform with the behavior and tastes of their peers in order to escape criticism. Those who deviate from social norms of their peer groups are often faced with rejection. For example, a boy who likes dancing and socializing more than roughhousing and sports will be faced with rejection by his male peers. Individuals whose gender identity deviates from their anatomical sex, or intersex individuals who do not conform with the gender their peers view them as, also might face criticism from their peer groups for gender nonconformity. Lastly, mass media teaches socialization through different portrayals of men and women. Females are often given less significant roles as domestic and maternal characters like a mother or wife. Introduction to Sociology states that when lead roles are given to women, they're either portrayed as saint-like figures or are sexualized, thus stigmatizing them as sex objects, or targets for violence. Meanwhile, men fill the roles of characters depicting traits of intelligence, leadership, and strength, and are rarely defined by their family status as maternal or nurturing. This type of portrayal reinforces the stereotype that men have to be assertive and dominating. Through socialization, people are introduced to certain traits corresponding with their sex. These traits are known as gender roles, referring to how society expects females and males to act, and can be broken down into masculine and feminine traits. The Masculinity and Femininity in Contemporary American Society, a reevaluation using the BEM Sex Role Inventory, offers a list of masculine and feminine traits ranking from most desirable to least desirable between the years 1972 and 1990. Between these years, respondents listed ambitious, has leadership abilities, self-sufficient, and independent as the most desirable masculine trait, while gullible, childlike, soft-spoken, and shy were the least. The top feminine traits were loyal, affectionate, compassionate, and warm, while masculinity, dominant, forceful, and aggressive were placed at the bottom of the list. The biggest issue with gender roles and breaking them down into masculine and feminine traits is sex and gender are not the same. Nature is not perfect. Not everyone's gender is born to fit the gender box of male or female. Intersex individuals and those of a deviant gender identity are an example of that. By putting traits considered tough, rational, and aggressive towards males, it makes it seem that they have to be more dominant and less emotional, whereas females are often described as being nurturing and passive, thus characterizing them as being less analytical and more sensitive. These stereotypes negatively define the domestic sphere, as women are seen as nurturing, therefore stereotyped as the primary child caregiver and household worker, whereas men are seen as dominant and aggressive, therefore stereotyped as being the primary income provider. Every American should understand how socialization influences gender roles and how stigma and stereotypes resulting from them lead to discrimination against sex and gender. By examining and reflecting upon the impact socialization and gender roles have, people will become more aware of how it affects oneself and how their own behavior might affect another. By educating oneself and others, it will lead to a more gender-equal society that does not discriminate against those who step outside their defined gender box or unknowingly force traits upon one sex because of how they appear externally.